Have you ever wondered where the Romani people come from? This group is fascinating as it is enigmatic. Perhaps you've heard stories about their mesmerizing dances, vibrant music, or even the aura of mystery surrounding them. But the truth is, the origins of the Romani people go far beyond stereotypes and legends. And here's the most intriguing part. They didn't come from where you might think. Yes, you could be completely wrong about the true journey of this extraordinary people. The history of the Romani is one of the most misunderstood in humanity. They've been called Egyptians, descendants of Atlantis, and even keepers of mystical secrets. But why have so many theories and myths arisen around them? Perhaps because their story is an epic of survival, resilience, and culture that has crossed continents and centuries. And the most surprising part? Much of what we know about them has only been uncovered recently, through studies unraveling secrets hidden in time. In this video, you'll uncover a story full of twists, injustices, and triumphs. We'll dive into their mysterious origins, understand the challenges they faced, and explore how they shaped their unique identity. Since time immemorial, the story of the Romani people has fascinated with its aura of mystery. Known as the Roma, they carry a deep connection to India in their heritage, revealed through linguistic and genetic studies. Just imagine, a people who, starting from the northern plains of India, explored diverse cultures, lands, and traditions. But why did they leave? Perhaps in a relentless search for opportunities or a desire to escape harsh conditions. Who hasn't dreamed of crossing borders to write their own story, right? The Romani journey to Europe was full of challenges. Crossing Persia and other lands, they faced not only the adversities of climate and hunger, but also cultural barriers. Imagine arriving in a place where your language is unknown, and your customs provoke curiosity or suspicion. Even so, the Roma found ways to adapt, using their resilience and practical skills to survive and integrate. But their migration wasn't just physical, it carried with it a true cultural melting pot. Their music, dances, and even their lively stories reflect the influences of the lands they passed through. Did you know that many musical rhythms we hear today have roots in this cultural fusion? It's fascinating to think how, even in motion, their identity was never lost, only reinvented. Speaking of reinvention, how do their stories connect to the exotic view the world still holds of them today? This leads us to a closer look at documented history and the mythologies surrounding the Romani people. The Romani have always sparked curiosity, and this isn't a recent phenomenon. In the Middle Ages, their mysteries gave rise to impressive speculations. Some believed they came from Egypt. Others, in even more extravagant theories, claimed they were descendants of Atlantis. This exotic aura surrounded them like a veil, but in reality, their own stories were rarely recorded. After all, a nomadic people don't usually leave written traces. The lack of internal documentation doesn't mean they lack memory. Their narratives have been passed down orally, from generation to generation, as living pieces of a puzzle. It's fascinating to realize that while many cultures rely on books to preserve history, the Roma carry it in their souls, through songs, legends, and customs. For example, the dances that captivate tourists today in countries like Spain or Hungary are echoes of a rich past that survived without paper or ink. And this is where mythology enters the scene, almost like a smokescreen. For centuries, the lack of clear records about the Roma left room for others to create stories about them, often distorting their origins and intentions. This shaped both the fascination and the prejudices they faced. But by unraveling these myths, we begin to see the richness behind the mystery. And speaking of richness, how did they overcome adversity in European lands, often seen as hostile? That's a question worth exploring. The arrival of the Roma in medieval Europe was anything but smooth. To many Europeans, this people seemed straight out of an exotic tale, with colorful clothing, vibrant music, and unusual customs. But fascination quickly turned to distrust. They were seen as permanent outsiders, targets of rumors and unjust accusations. Can you imagine being judged simply for being different? At the time, it was common for the Roma to be treated as spies or even criminals, often without any proof. Despite all this discrimination, the Roma displayed remarkable adaptability. It wasn't easy, prejudice was everywhere, but they learned to turn their skills into means of survival. Their craftsmanship, such as metalwork, gained recognition. Moreover, their oral and musical traditions found a place in many local cultures. But not every adaptation was enough to prevent severe persecution. From mass expulsions to bans on their customs, the Roma faced unimaginable challenges. Even so, their resilience is inspiring. They continued carrying their identity like a treasure no one could steal. This constant struggle shaped the essence of their culture and makes us wonder, how far can perseverance go to keep a people's roots alive? And speaking of resistance, the tragedy of genocide during World War II reminds us that the consequences of hatred go far beyond what we can imagine. The 20th century brought a terrible shadow for the Roma. During World War II, the persecution that had once been veiled became explicit and devastating. The Nazi regime implemented the Porajmos, a genocide that wiped out thousands of Roma. Many were sent to concentration camps where they endured the same atrocities as other persecuted groups. Imagine living with the knowledge that your very existence was deemed undesirable. This tragic history still echoes in the memories of their descendants and teaches us profound lessons about the dangers of prejudice. The most painful part is that for decades this tragedy was overlooked. Recognition of the Roma genocide came late, almost like a footnote in world history. Many people don't even know that they were targets of extermination policies. And this isn't just about historical memory, it's about justice. When we omit a people's suffering, we perpetuate their invisibility. Have you ever stopped to think about how many stories around us are waiting to be heard? Despite their scars, the Roma continue to fight to keep the memory of their ancestors alive. Today, museums, documentaries, and educational initiatives aim to shed light on the Porajmos and its impacts. Learning about this history is more than an act of empathy. It's a way to prevent similar tragedies from happening again. But beyond memory, is it possible to turn this pain into strength to fight the racism that still exists today? The answer may lie in the pursuit of identity and unity, a theme that shines like a beacon in the Roma's history. Even after centuries of persecution, the Roma never let their identity be erased. In 1971, a historic milestone, the establishment of the Romani flag, with its blue and green fields and red wheel, and the anthem, Gelem Gelem. These symbols are not just cultural emblems, but powerful declarations that, despite adversity, they are still standing. Think about it. How can something as simple as a flag carry so much meaning? It's proof that unity around symbols can strengthen any community. Still, the Roma's struggle is far from over. They continue to face social and economic exclusion in many countries. From precarious housing to difficulties accessing education and jobs, the challenges are numerous. But there is hope. Organizations like the Romani Union work tirelessly to promote rights and visibility for this people. A practical example? Educational incentive programs that help young Roma enter universities and break cycles of poverty. It makes us wonder, what more can we do to fight inequality around us? Roma identity today is a fascinating mix of tradition and modernity. While keeping ancestral practices alive, such as dances and festivals, the Roma also explore new ways to tell their stories, through films, contemporary music, or social media. This creative resistance inspires not only their own people, but all of us. After all, who hasn't wondered how to hold on to their roots while navigating a constantly changing world? And speaking of change, the Roma's history leads us to deeper reflections about human strength and resilience. The history of the Roma is much more than a tale of mysteries. It's a lesson in resilience, culture, and survival. If you want to keep learning fascinating stories like this one, subscribe to the channel right now and turn on notifications. Here you'll discover a world full of lessons, stories, and inspirations that can change the way you see the world. We're just starting this journey. Are you ready to move forward?